Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Anyone got any real paranormal stories? No LARPing and no purposefully making your paragraphs longer. Honestly, half of you are as bad as the dickheads on his. But otherwise anything goes. Aliens, ghosts, demons, angels, secret government programs, etc.
Okay, I'll give you a bare bones story with no embellishment. Back in the late 90s, I lived in a mobile home in Highland City, Florida, and one August night my parents randomly suggested the family go for a walk. They grabbed my 3-year-old sister. 11-year-old me grabbed my pocket knife and a flannel shirt that the prevailing temperatures did not at all justify, because I was dumb as hell as a kid, and my parents led us around the block around 2nd Avenue, through 1st Street SE, and onto Lake Hancock Road, which I was to learn was also locally known as Peep Road. At the time it was unpaved, and the houses that are alongside it now weren't there, and there was just dense woods on either side, and it was only lit by a single street light at the junction of 1st Street and Lake Hancock. So it was kind of creepy, but no more so than any unlit road in rural Florida. Until we'd walked a ways down it and shit got all fucked up. After we passed a certain point, the woods got dead silent, and every hair on my body stood on end, and it was fucking freezing. I was shivering, and the flannel shirt that had been entirely too hot for the night was suddenly entirely inadequate for how cold it was. My sister started crying, and I was freaked out, and my parents decided it was time to go home. We turned back, and when we stepped over the invisible threshold, things were normal again. It was hot, and you could hear the crickets and cicadas, and all was as it should be. But before we left for real, my dad encouraged me to stick my hand back over the border we'd just crossed. I did, and the contrast was extreme. My body and upper arm were sweating in the August heat, but my forearm and hand were freezing and covered in goosebumps. I kept drawing my limb in and out, forward and back, and the line of cold was tangible and constant. We went back home after that, and my parents told me the story of Peep Road. Back in the 80s there'd been a drug dealer, nicknamed Bo Peep. Part of the dope game. He had been selling a lot of meth and vying with a rival for the affections of a woman, until one morning his body was discovered, seated in a folding lawn chair in the middle of the road with his 12-gauge shot propped against the armrest. He died from 2 gunshots, one in the balls, the other in the chest. The sheriffs ruled it as a self-end. Now, obviously, nobody thought it was really plausible that he'd killed himself by blasting his balls off and then shooting himself in the heart, and had time to neatly prop the shotgun up against his chair before he died. But he was a known criminal and dope dealer, and the sheriff department weren't too interested in the details, so in the absence of any suspects or witnesses they ruled it a self-end. Said he accomplished it because he went crazy on meth. That's how the story goes, anyway. And the road his body was discovered on was Lake Hancock Road, and the spot where his body was left propped in that lawn chair was the spot where you stepped over that invisible line and the air was suddenly ice cold. So, anyway, as the years went by I met 7 people who knew the story of Peep Road, its haunted reputation, 3 of whom had experienced weird things or seen an apparition there. In 2011 I met Bo Peep's younger sister. She confirmed every detail I knew, except she claimed her brother had been shot all to hell, had the 12-gauge emptied into him, and the police had still ruled it another self-end. She wholeheartedly believed her brother's ghost was haunting that road, and gave me his real name, and told me to look up his obituary in the Lakeland Ledger. It's been many years since I've left Polk County, but I intend to go back one day and take another look at Peep Road.
Here is one from long ago. Really tired, so about to go to sleep. Weather outside is normal. Lie on my side, start to go to sleep. Later on, hear footsteps behind me. A cold chill hits me hard, too afraid to turn around. Feels like something pulled back my hair over my ear. Hear a sudden really loud screeching scream, causing me to open my eyes and see outside that it is raining. Turn around to see there is nothing there, but I see what looked like a black and burned hand with red-tinted fingernail claws go under the bed. Lay back down and try to sleep through it. Hear the scream again, but it came from under the bed. Wake up in a cold sweat. Look under the bed, nothing is there. Look outside, and it's raining. The same raining when I heard the first scream. I thought I was dreaming the first scream. Start to think I wasn't. Couldn't go back to bed for the rest of the night. Had no idea how to explain what happened. I couldn't tell if I was awake or dreaming when the first scream happened.
I keep finding people I met in dreams or who projected out to me. When I was 5, I had an invisible friend named Ethan. Ethan vanished from my life around the time I got into high school. I knew it sounded crazy, but he felt real to me somehow, so I promised myself I'd find him someday. Flash forward to my 20s and I'm really drunk at a sci-fi convention. One guy catches my attention, so I challenge him to dice. We start talking. He sounds like Ethan. I talk about Ethan saying he was a childhood friend, omitting the invisible bit. His eyes get wide. He fills in the gaps I left out of the stories. He gets super excited. Apparently he was looking for me, too. Sadly, time changed us too much. We were too different to stay friends anymore. And then there was Ken. Ken was outgoing and brash but had an artistic streak. This one I saw mostly in dreams, but sometimes I'd meditate and he'd just show up, so we'd talk that way. My final year of high school, I ran into a brash artistic boy. This is spooky, but I don't say anything. Then one day he asks me if I ever dream with other people. I admit that I think I do, but I'm not sure. He smiles and says, "I thought I found you," and we start comparing dreams. They all match. He was my boyfriend for about 3 years. While in college, I used to swap dream journals with a guy the first met over a forum. We both believed in X stuff, so it was fun to do dream translations for each other. One day I told him about a dream series in which I'm a cat. He straight up tells me about Lovecraft's dream cycle books. I read up and find it matches near perfectly. Also, that guy walks in the dream, too. Yep. More matching stories of stuff we both have seen or done together. I lost track of him 5 years ago. I'm currently hunting for someone who has been very positive in my life. A quiet yet regal metalhead with a knack for channeling spirits. I wonder if he knows I'm alive. Wish me luck, guys.
This is my first ever provable paranormal experience that I physically saw with my own eyes. On top of that, I examined all the possibilities and potential causes of this kind of shit, but there's no other explanation for this one other than something paranormal. Be me hanging out with 2 of my friends one night when I suggested we go to this decommissioned Superfund site that is now just a bunch of hills and grass fields used for dirt bike trails. The only way to get to it is by walking down these train tracks right into the heart of the site. Most of it is on one side of the tracks and there's a small section with a pond on the other side. At around 1 a.m., we walked from this nearby neighborhood that has a trail leading to the train tracks not too far from the site. A few people have killed themselves on those very tracks as well. After walking down the train tracks for a bit, there's a spot off to the side opposite from the Superfund site with a big open area. It's a sand-covered hill with a pond at the bottom that's all overgrown and has the remnants of dirt bike trails around it. We decided to walk around the pond and check it out. We got down the hill and I instantly picked up the odor of a feral animal, which kind of spooked me because it could have meant we were in some wild animal territory. We didn't worry too much about it at that point and just walked around this small pond really quietly while being on edge because the woods are always spooky at night. After like 10 minutes of walking around, my friends wanted to smoke, but I decided we should wait until after we got back, which turned out to be a great decision. We started heading back the way we came and noticed something weird. The smell from earlier was now in a different spot up the hill and further down the tracks towards our exit. The closer to the exit trail we went, the more potent the smell was. It was like a rusty, decaying animal smell, rotting flesh, and I had never smelled it before. I suddenly noticed a large, darker than normal patch of blackness off to the left of the tracks right on the edge of the tree line, and we all came to a stop. Note: we don't walk with flashlights since it's easier to see the path once your eyes adjust to the darkness. I had no idea what this thing was. My first thought was that it was a black bear because it looked like it had 4 legs and was kind of foraging around but not really moving. I caught a glimpse of 2 white beady little eyes on its head. I'm looking at this blob trying to make out a shape or see if it's moving, but it's not, it's just staying there. Adrenaline starts kicking in as I'm staring down this creature. I got ready to pick up some rocks and chuck them at the thing in case it started coming at us, but after a few minutes of standing there panicking, it still hadn't moved. We mustered up enough courage to shine a phone flashlight at it, but we were too far away for the light to reach it. You could tell it wasn't a bush or something because it was separate from the background of trees. All 3 of us could see it, so it was definitely there. It was about 7 feet tall and 7 feet wide. We decided to get closer to shine some light on the situation, and it didn't work. Once we started moving towards it, it started moving the fuck away from us. At the exact same pace. When the thing started moving, it lifted off the ground a few feet like it was hovering. It didn't make a sound and it didn't joggle up and down like it was walking. At this point it looked like a floating black ball. We followed it for a couple 100 meters until it just vanished into thin air right at the start of the exit trail.
I am haunted by something. I don't know what it is, but it's been driving me insane forever. The first time I saw it, I was only about 12. Walking my sister's dog. She was in her honeymoon. I see it up the street. Near our house. It's sitting in our backyard, staring into my mother's window. It looked like a person in black clothing. A cloak or a dress. It was early September and only midday. But it made everything around it seem dark. Dog is freaking out, pulling its leash and growing. Full on snapping its mouth open and closed so hard that I can still hear the clack of his teeth. The shadow figure turns and looks at me. It has no face. Just pure blackness under its hood. I nearly shat myself and ran with the dog back to my sister's house down the street. Locked myself and the dog inside. Hide in my sister's shower, away from any windows. Dog was still barking. I apparently passed out. But I don't remember. I woke up in my sister's kitchen, on the floor. I was out for a few hours. I ran back home, so terrified I left the lights on and water running. Mother didn't believe I saw anything. 2 months later, she died. Her death was unexpected. She had a successful open heart surgery weeks before and was doing fine. It was the night of Hurricane Sandy. She died of heart failure in the night. 2 weeks ago, my sister's dog passed away. He was suffering from cancer. A few days before he passed, I was laying in bed, and I could have sworn there was a man in my doorway. I would have bet my soul someone was staring at me. This is the best image I have of what it looked like, except it had no eyes, and its clothing when I first saw it, was tattered and ripped. And flowing, like the wind was moving it. I also once saw a ghost boy in the cemetery where my family is buried. But that was a minor sighting.
Got a few, but here's two related. Winter, during kindergarten. My class is set to go on a skating trip to the local YMCA. Teacher's a sub, gives 0 fucks. Instead of letting me stay in the class until the end of the day, reading like I always did, she makes me get ready and go home, refusing to call anyone to actually get me or let them know. I know the way home, and even as a kid it's probably only a 30-minute trip, so I'm annoyed but not really put out. More glad to be away from the bitch. That night I came across one of my cousins, because my family was out searching everywhere for me. I remember walking out into the light of the outside, and then suddenly it's dark and I'm walking on a trail behind a house near my house, and come out to the sidewalk only to see my cousin just down the hill. I did not then, nor do I know now, where those almost 9 hours went. About 4 years later is what made me really question that though. Summer night, me and my mother and brother were outside. We've never been very day people. When nice, we'd go for walks and hang out in the front garden late at night. Like 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. late. One night we saw relatively close what appeared to be a UFO. We watched it for a while before me and my brother ran off, shortly followed by my mother to the now defunct memorial grounds behind the house after the UFO thing moved down the street a bit. Or so I'm told, because unlike the two of them I don't remember any such thing. Apparently I stayed looking at it past my mother and brother, who went back up front a good hour before I did. I was in the garden at about midnight sitting up on the fence, and then I'm coming up the steps as they're getting ready to go back inside, and it's about 2:30. I felt off, but had no idea anything had supposedly happened until the following afternoon when my brother mentioned it. Funny thing is, despite these I believe there is alien life, but the skeptic in me still has a hard time believing in contact.
I lived in the countryside till I was 18. One night I had trouble sleeping, and being the crybaby I still am, I woke up my sister. I was about 13, so she was 16. It was a warm summer night, so we had the window open and it was 4 a.m. All of a sudden we realized something was going on inside the tool shed. Even though it had a heavy opaque window, there was a light flickering inside, moving slowly. Some noises came from inside, but we were too far. I decided to check if my parents had been awakened too, but their room door was still closed, so I assumed they were sleeping. I basically told my sister I wouldn't fall back asleep if she hadn't come with me to the shed, so we went. Voices came from inside and it seemed like they were singing some slow chant. I'll never fucking forget what I saw when I looked between two planks in the shed wall. My mom, my aunt and 3 other women were sitting on the ground with their feet against one another, completely naked, forming some sort of star. In the middle of the circle there was this guy dressed as a Catholic priest, I guess. The white collar thing is Catholic if I remember correctly. He was holding a huge black candle. I basically told my sister mom was naked, so she assumed it was some kinky shit between her and our dad, so she didn't even bother looking and took me back inside. A couple years ago I was helping mom rearrange her furniture and I found some dry leaves in her drawers along with some diaries full of anatomic sketches. The model of these drawings was definitely my mom. Last year she went to the ER for a twisted ankle and I found out she has some sort of handmade tattoo on her lower back. She instantly covered it when she realized someone might notice. My family fucking scares me.
Be me, live in suburb-type area, but with very dense woods all around. Animals used to come and go, but there have been a few housing developments built recently and I haven't seen as many. My neighborhood was built on old Native American territory, cliché I know, but it's a documented fact. Tons of reports of paranormal activity over the years, whatever. Starting a few years ago, a friend moved into one of the newly built neighborhoods, and I started taking a path through the woods to walk to his house, only a few minutes away. We go out into the woods all the time to smoke and fuck around. Eventually we start noticing that the atmosphere changes at night, no animal noises, oppressive atmosphere, etc. We aren't pussies and figure it's just because dark woods. However, we kept feeling off whenever we went in at night, still figure it's just placebo. One night we meet up to take a walk and talk, but a few minutes after entering the woods we realize that it feels even worse than usual. We all of a sudden hear a sound in the woods. Honestly, I can't describe it very well. Sounded like weird shouting/chanting, but too uneven and off-pitch to be human, unless some crackhead was waiting in the woods to purposefully scare us. We get spooked and fuck off back to my place. Feels like something is watching us as we leave. Fast forward a few months to yesterday, we don't go out in the woods at night anymore. Me and a few friends are hanging out, decide to go explore the woods since it's daytime. We stumble across a deer carcass, mostly decomposed, and had obviously been there for a while. Carcass was completely mauled and eviscerated. We found some intestines that hadn't been eaten by scavengers a few yards away. Only predators that live nearby that could do anything like this are black bears, but like I said, the woods are mostly deserted. However, it's not impossible that it was a bear. We explore deeper into the woods, don't find anything else, but feel watched, and at one point we heard a few branches snap deeper into the woods away from us. We eventually leave, nothing too exciting. Last night when I let my 2 dogs out, they go to the edge of the woods which border my property and growl while staring into the tree-line. I call them back after a few minutes, but they don't budge, keep sitting and growling. Start to get a bad feeling. Eventually they came back, but one kept pawing at the door and whining all night. What the fuck is this? Am I just paranoid, or is this actually something paranormal? WTF do I do?
Sitting outside with my kid one warm night. Both are engrossed in our tech. See something out of the corner of my eye. Look, nope, nothing. Here he whines, turns around, he's looking at the same place. Scared, crying, he's too, blubbering. He tries to scramble out the backside of his chair, won't even get off it, just wants through it. Grab him, he keeps looking over my shoulder and crying, won't stop until inside and we calm him down. Won't say anything about it. But I also didn't want to mess him up and make him talk about it. Another time, he said something was in the bedroom ceiling, against the wall. I told him to leave. He does, and I watch his eyes. After a second or two, he follows it across the ceiling and out the window. Once again, he's 2, and if he were faking, it would have walked out the door and down the stairs like we do. Also random talking to people that aren't there on several occasions.
My friends bought a huge chunk of property in southern Colorado in the San Luis Valley. I went out for a month to clear 10 acres of forest for greenhouses to be built. I was there by myself the entire time and had to stay in a tent because there was no infrastructure yet. One night I was sitting on the edge of this overlook before bed, and the entire canyon below me lit up with a huge flash of light and then was gone immediately. I was kinda freaked out, but got over it and just went to bed. A few days later I was talking to a rancher a couple miles down the road, and he said the morning after the night of the flash he found 3 of his cows in that canyon with all the blood drained out of their bodies and their eyes, and some of their organs were removed. There weren't any tire tracks or any sign of struggle whatsoever near the cows. And let me tell you, this property was in the middle of nowhere. Needless to say, I was pretty freaked out the rest of my time out there. Lots of weird shit like that was going, and the entire area just had a very weird vibe. I'm normally a very pragmatic person and not interested in the supernatural at all. But after my time in the San Luis Valley, I'm not so sure anymore. When I was around 7 or so, I often ended up spending summers at my grandparents' house in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. I spent quite a bit of that time alone. However, I have vivid memories of interacting with teenage male in the house at times when others were not around, which isn't possible. My memories of this person are hazy, but I know I saw them and might have talked to them in my grandparents' basement, which had a rather large amount of junk in it. Much later in life, I learned that my mother once had a brother who had died from a drug overdose, but the family reported it as him having drowned in a nearby lake. If there was a ghost in the house, it would have likely have been him. I have no outstanding good or bad memories of the place, and the house has since been sold, but I can't help but think that I might have interacted with my uncle at some point, even though he would have been dead for 20+ years.
I always felt like I was insane and I just passed everything off as nothing. When I was around 8 or so, I finally got my own room. It was close to Halloween on a Friday night, although the incident was in the early AMs of Saturday. Actually, to be precise 3 a.m. Earlier in the evening, my family was in a grocery store and they had this feature on an end cap with a bucket and various Halloween icons at the end that would play a chiptune when pressed. They all played the same chiptune, and although I can only remember vague pieces of it, it was your standard comical Halloween chase kind of song. That night I go to bed as normal, but suddenly I just wake up and can't sleep at all. I had a small night light in the room because I was terrified of the dark and my eyes gazed at my closed door. I couldn't take them away actually. Suddenly, a shadow poured through the top of the door and onto the ceiling. It slowly came towards me in the shape of a hand and hid under the blanket. My heart was racing and all my mind could fucking think about was that goddamn fucking chiptune. It got louder and louder in my head until I just bolted out of my room and laid down in front of the fireplace where we had a fish tank in it that was really bright, and I just cowered there with my stuffed animal until the morning. Periodically random stuff would happen of no consequence. We had a lid that would flip on our garbage can that would inexplicably flip as if someone is throwing away garbage. I watched it happen on several occasions and even got my mom to partially witness it, but she passed it off. There were times when I was alone in the place and I could hear faint conversations. But I passed this off to the air conditioner, since whenever I placed my head on the vents, they were on the floor. The conversations grew a little louder. I eventually got a different room when my youngest brother got old enough and he took it over. Although he would never say as much, for a long period of time he wouldn't sleep in there at all. He slept on the living room couch. I gave my reasoning as to why, but my mom felt it was something else bothering him. He wouldn't say. Whatever it was, however, seems to have left. My older brother took over the place and my youngest brother still sleeps in that room. Neither of them say weird stuff happens. Maybe I'm just crazy. When I was in school, close to when it was time to leave, I would always watch the clock. Whether that was a dial clock, digital, or my watch, it was all the same. I would focus on it intently. Everything would go silent and blurred but the clock, and it almost felt like I could feel the flow of time passing. As I would begin to exhaust myself, I would witness the second hand turn back and forth, back and forth. It would never move past its original location, but would move backwards and forwards. Until I lose focus, and the clock resumes. I successfully did on numerous, nearly without fail, occasions, but I never believed I was stopping time or controlling it. I passed it off as my brain playing tricks on me, but it felt so surreal when I managed to have it happen on a digital clock, where a whole minute went back. There was no way to actually validate what was happening though, and eventually I lost focus completely and it became very hard to accomplish. The last time I tried it, I grew really tired before anything could happen. I have this weird sense. It's hard to explain, but the rudimentary version goes like this. Whenever there is a spirit nearby, or if I witness a spirit physically or a recording, I begin to cry. Not emotionally cry, but tears begin to form. I'm not depressed, or sad, or anything. I remember watching ghost videos and I would use this ability to gauge if a video was fake or not. 9 times out of 10 I was right. Even reading some of the stories here have caused me to tear. The one about the red house and the little brother for one. Whenever things happened around my house when I was younger, I would tear up. Not spooky, but back to that 3 a.m. thing I mentioned. Ever since I always woke up at 3 a.m. Always. That lasted until I was 20 or so when I just happened to stop. I would fall back asleep momentarily later, but no matter what I would always wake up at 3 a.m.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.